This is a Flying Cow production.
Book 1, Water. Book 2, Earth. Book 3, Fire. Long ago, Nickelodeon introduced a series called Avatar: The Last Airbender. It combined great anime-style animation, strong storytelling, heart, and humor. It was great, and everyone that saw it loved it. Until one day, a terrible movie came out which everyone hated. But my co-host Loren Collins knows none of this because he's never seen the show. And that's why we are watching every episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I believe this could be Loren's new favorite show. Or at least top 20. Well, hello, and welcome back to Comets and Cabbages here on the Flying Cow. I am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and I do not have wooden fingers, I promise.
My name's Amanda Van Heil, and I have the Airbender spirit.
And I am Loren Collins, and I swear I have not been making weapons secretly for the Fire Nation.
That's good to know.
Yes.
Lies.
Yes, thank you. I was about to say, I don't know why you brought that up. All right. Well, yes, we are continuing our reviews of Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're actually getting towards the end of the first season, Book 1, Water. We are in the 17th episode. We're plugging right along here. Getting up to here. I will say, and I don't know, maybe this is a spoiler, but we've kind of been talking about it the whole time. This is the last episode before they finally arrive in the Northern Water Tribe. We've been building it up this whole season, and starting next episode, that is where we will be. So looking forward to that.
I've seen when you mentioned there was a map before, I went and looked up the map, so that they're better than some other fictional worlds, like an actual visualization for what the geography is here, kind of like Westeros, I guess. But has there ever been any sense in the external materials, I guess, is like where this route has taken them? Or is it just kind of arbitrary? Like they've been traveling through the Earth Kingdom, quote unquote. But
sure. I mean, I will say we did see the first time we actually see the map on screen. There is that bit where we have seen, I mean, we brought it up, the fact that they are basically hopping all over the place.
Yeah, true.
We see lines from the westernmost part to the easternmost part. I will say it looks like I'm looking at a map online right now. Let me see if I can bring this in really fast. But it looks like it is a map that not only is of the kingdoms, but does show some of their travels. Let me see if it will.
Is this the one on the Avatar wiki? I saw that it had like a bunch of pins dropped on it. But
no, the one I'm looking at, like, it's got some artwork with Appa, and it's got like some faint lines. Like, the lines aren't going to show up super well in this, but let me see if it's not going to upload. I might upload it later when I edit the episode, but in its current form, it's not going to do so. But let me see if I can drop it in the chat. But basically, it's just an image of the worlds as we know it, and some faint lines as to their possible travels.
Okay.
But I mean, you can see it looks like they've gone to the easternmost parts and the westernmost parts. And although I don't see any lines on the southern and the northern, which we know they went there. But yeah, during that one episode, we were 3 episodes in, and it looked like they had gone all over the place, which is why I've brought up the point several times. It looks like they could have already have been in the Northern Water Tribe.
Yeah, it was a very inefficient travel.
Yeah, I mean, but again, they have Aang as their guide.
True.
Which they should have taken the navigation away from him immediately.
What I took away from the map, honestly, was seeing like there's a very large like Earth Kingdom continent. Like, if they want to stay away from the Fire Nation ships and navy, just like again, stay away from the coastlines a little more.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that, especially, in the southernmost part, is closer to a more direct shot to the Northern Water Tribe. So
there also, I do notice here, there is a desert. So yeah, I fair enough.
Yes,
to avoid that.
Yes, yeah, yeah, which we will actually encounter at some point. But yeah. So do we want to go ahead then? And I think we've bantered long enough. Do we want to get into the actual episode?
Yeah, we finally get back to another Air Nation.
Air Temple.
Temple. No. It's not Air Nation.
Air Nomads.
Air Nomads.
That's the Air Nomads. The people are.
We were at the Southern Temple before. Now we're at the Northern.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, for some reason, it's easiest to just call them all nations, even though. Because that's how Katara refers to them, as the 4 nations. But only the Fire Nation is a nation. We've got the other is a kingdom and a tribe. And then nomads. So, yeah.
The Earth Kingdom have multiple kings? Because we've met one king, but he's not a king of the Earth Kingdom. He's the king of...
Right. I will say we will encounter another king that is... basically accepted as the king overall.
The king of kings. That
is
very meaningful.
Yeah, but obviously we will discuss that more when we get there. But yeah, right now, this episode, the 17th episode of this season, it is entitled The Northern Air Temple. And it was once again directed by Dave Filoni, and written by Elizabeth Welch. And the episode premiered November 4th, 2005. This episode basically starts with, the kids sitting around a campfire, hearing stories about what they perceive to be ancient stories of airbenders. The storyteller refers to the people as Skywalkers. And now I will say that it is made clear later that these are stories that he's telling of things that his grandfather saw. But in this first little introduction, that's not the way that it's presented. Or did I miss him saying my grandfather saw the Skywalkers? When we
joined them, I actually backed this up. I think we just joined them at the end of the story where he's saying,
well, I mean, it is a part of the story. But I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily the exact end or if we just kind of fast forward quickly to the end after the introduction. But it doesn't sound like he introduced, so far as I know, we only are introduced to the fact that these are stories the grandfather told when Aang says, your grandfather must have seen these, the airbenders 100 years ago. To which the guy responds, Grandpa Pappy saw him last week. Yeah. But yeah, that does set up the idea that, people are seeing what they perceive to be. Now, again, the storyteller never calls them airbenders. He calls them, I've been saying skywalkers. Did he say skywalker or did he say airwalker?
I want to say airwalker. I feel like
I was about to say, I think I would have cottoned on to skywalker as in
I don't think we can get away with saying skywalker.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I just said skywalker. Yeah, and it wasn't until I said it out loud that I was like, that doesn't sound right.
So does this mean Aang is the last Skywalker?
Yeah. Ray apparently didn't get the job done. But
so the next episode is the rise of Skywalker.
No, please no. But yeah, so we are introducing the idea that there actually might be airbenders, and Aang seems a little hopeful. They seem to have already been on their way to the Northern Air Temple. And, this story now just kind of makes them more excited. Maybe this is where the surviving airbenders went. Maybe they're at the Northern Air Temple. I will say, though, the episode does not keep up this possibility for long, because as we are coming up to the Northern Air Temple, and we get a pretty good shot of the Northern Air Temple, and we see the gliders, Aang knows immediately, just by the way that they fly, that these are not airbenders. They are just people who have gotten a hold of sophisticated gliders. And so, before we even meet any of them, he is immediately disappointed. I will say we can also see in that picture that there is smoke coming from, the temple. So we kind of get hints of, or foreshadowing of, kind of the remodeling that we will see later. The revolution, the industrialization that has taken place at this air temple. But, initially he's just kind of disappointed with the lack of airbenders, and decides to kind of show them what a real airbender is like. And does end up encountering one of these people with the gliders, who, while he is not a true airbender, eventually does kind of get Aang's stamp of approval as someone who at least has the airbender spirit. And that is a young boy known as Teo, who kind of becomes an important character in the episode. We discover later that he is disabled. He is bound to a wheelchair, which later on we'll kind of get kind of the background as to his father's basically inspiration because of Teo's injuries. But at this point we just are kind of introduced to these people that live in the air temple. But Aang is kind of really disappointed at the amount of kind of updates that have been made to the temple. There's pipes going all through it, and air, again, let us not forget that the word temple is in here. Aang saw this as a very sacred space, not just to the fact that it is his people that have now been wiped out, but just in the spiritual sense. The air nomads themselves saw this as a very spiritual place to be respected. So Aang is very unnerved at kind of the changes that have been made. So they go basically looking for parts of the temple that have been untouched. They do encounter a courtyard which has been as yet untouched. Teo is with them and kind of showing off. He's like, yeah, this place is nice. of course, apparently Teo did not know of his father's plans to remodel, because while they are looking at the courtyard, a portion of the wall is knocked down right in front of Aang, kind of causing more anguish to his despair here. And we are introduced to Teo's father, the inventor, who is voiced by Rene Aubergenois. We have the return of Rene Aubergenois to the Avatar space. And,
inventor just now, did he not get a name? He may not have, but
he did not get like a typical first name. I will say, when I was watching it, I always watch it with the closed captioning. I believe the episode referred to him as like the Mechanist or something like that.
But you may be right.
Yeah, I don't think he is specifically given a name. I mean, yeah, in the episode description, he's literally just referred to as Teo's father. I have always just kind of thought of him as the inventor.
That's what I've always called him also, just the inventor.
Yeah, I will say also on this Wikipedia page,
it does say Mechanist.
I was about to say he is referred to on the Wikipedia page as the Mechanist.
And also on the IMDb page.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like that is what they have chosen to call him. It sounds like we never get a first or last name for the man. I mean, it would have been nice, because, I would say he is arguably more impactful in the episode than Teo is. But Teo gets a name and, his father does not.
I recognize the Mechanist term because I saw that name dropped earlier in the live action Netflix show.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure.
Who is playing the Mechanist?
Oh, and who is that?
It is Community's Danny Pudi.
Oh, you know what? I remember seeing that and not remembering who the Mechanist was. I remember going, the Mechanist? Who's the Mechanist?
Okay. We've got a somewhat younger Mechanist in the live action show.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Danny Pudi's got to be in his 40s now.
To be fair, but I registered this guy as being older than 40s. He looks in his 50s. 60s.
I mean,
granted, he has like a 15-year-old son, so it would make sense if he's like in his mid to late 40s or something.
Yeah. So yeah, and I don't see anything in his appearance that says that he has to be older than his 40s. I mean, he doesn't look. I mean, he's balding on top, but I know men in their 20s that are balding.
That's true. That's fine. He's not actually gray-headed. He's got solid color going.
Yeah, solid color hair.
He's got solid hair, which even I don't have. So that's true. Yes.
I mean, he does have the patchy eyebrows, but that has nothing to do with age.
True.
But yeah, so obviously Aang is upset with all of the changes that the Mechanist has made. I will say I started to mention when I was first mentioning it, I'm glad that we got Rene Aubergenois coming back as another character, kind of a bigger character than we got him in the previous episode he was in.
And someone I see, I could be wrong, someone who is at least theoretically more likely to return.
Yeah. I mean, he's at least mentioned is being in a character in the live action show. So, he's at least more important than the guy from Loren's least favorite episode, which I can't even remember the name of right now. The Great Divide. Yeah. But yeah, so it's nice to hear Rene Aubergenois. I spouted off before about how much I love Rene Aubergenois. I don't need to do that again, but it's always great to hear his voice. But yeah, like I said, he's kind of defending, his reasons for doing this, that he and a group of people found themselves homeless, I would assume, as a result of the war with the Fire Nation. And they sought refuge at the Northern Air Temple. And, part of the battle was, only he and his son survived, but his son was, badly injured. I would assume that as a result of that is why he's bound to a wheelchair. But he decided to use, the skills and the knowledge that he has basically to, give his son, a greater life. And, not only is he not just bound to this wheelchair, but he's able to take to the skies. I actually kind of really appreciated that as kind of his motivation, the motivation for this character, everything that he has done to this temple, regardless of how you might feel about, the sacredness of this temple, he has used it to make a better life for his son, but also his fellow refugees, so, I understand Aang's feelings here, but at the same time, I also, it was a place where they could find sanctuary.
I'm going to come down on the side of the folks who moved in. I had initially thought, I shared this previously, that I thought the air nomads had occupied their temples for longer, but until the Fire Nation, took them over. I think y'all previously corrected me on this, that it was relatively soon after Aang.
After Aang's disappearance, yeah.
So yeah, that means these places have been abandoned for close to a century. Any adverse possession, rules are going to be like, if it's been abandoned for decades and no one has even seen the people who are supposed to occupy these places, you can move in. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it'd be one thing if, this was like a colonization thing where he was the one that cleared out the air nomads.
Like kicked out all the airbenders and...
Yeah, or if it was well known that the airbenders were trying to get back to the air temples. But as you say, this is a people that, as far as everyone else is concerned, has been wiped out. So, as I said, I was surprised that the Fire Nation themselves hadn't, colonized these temples as, at the very least, military bases. So, yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is, and I think we've discussed this briefly before, I think part of the reason I freeze up on the term air nomad is because absolutely nothing we see about them suggests they are nomadic. They are the most...
Because they have temples where they live. But I will say it does seem like they probably migrate from temple to temple. And we've already heard Aang talk about the fact that he had friends in other nations, whereas it doesn't seem like traveling amongst other nations was typical for other peoples.
Well, they have the ability to fly, so that kind of helps. And sky bisons to ride.
But I get the feeling there are like 4 temples, I assume. Like
yes. North, south, east, and west.
Yeah, we got a grand total of 4 temples, and they might move between them, but that's still not nomadic. You're just going from one point, from one home to the other home. Sure. Which are nice homes. Like they're nicer than just about anything we've seen outside of Omashu in this entire time. So
I think
maybe it's a holdover from earlier centuries or something before they built their.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. But also, like I said, it might also have just been a name that stuck simply because they're the only people that travels.
But the Fire Nation very clearly travels. They have boats.
Well, the Fire Nation conquers.
But do we know they don't travel? But back during the more peaceful eras, would they not have traveled?
I mean, we know very little, but we know for sure that the air nomads traveled, and the other peoples. At least it wasn't common for the other.
Maybe they just traveled more regularly.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. Like I said, you know, Aang is very upset by the changes, but Teo decides to, you know, try to boost Aang's spirit and show him an inner an inner chamber, very similar to the one that we saw in the southern temple, that is, so far as Aang knows, only accessible by an airbender. And, you know, Teo lets him know, he was like, you know, we can't get in here, so I just want you to know, you know, this thing is here. Obviously, he's hoping that Aang will show him inside, but Aang is just like, no, I don't want this place to change. You know, knowing it's here makes me feel better, kind of thing, and I don't want to risk it being changed. Kind of thing is the way that it's left initially. But I will say eventually, and honestly rather soon, like it really seems like they go before lunch to see the thing, they go have lunch, they go flying, and then Aang's like, you know what, you got an airbender spirit, let me show you the room. Like it really does seem like a quick turnaround. But yeah, he does eventually open this inner chamber, only to discover the depths of the Mechanist's treachery, that he has secretly been building weapons for the Fire Nation. Of course, everyone has a problem with this. So the Mechanist is under fire immediately, but you know, he lets them know that, you know, as touching and inspiring as the story he shared before, it wasn't the full story, because they were actually encountered the Fire Nation like a year after they moved in, and basically his the terms for them being able to live there peacefully was that he would in turn have to work for the Fire Nation.
Yeah, it's kind of sort of the same agreement that the ants came to in A Bug's Life with grasshoppers. It's just like, yeah, we'll give you what you want if you let us leave in peace. Like, yeah, we'll come back periodically. We'll collect from you, and we'll, you know, we'll take our protection money.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, in the Bugs Life, it's a little less insidious because it's well known to the entire colony. You know, it's not like, you know, only one. It's not like only the queen knows of this hush hush deal that she's made with the grasshoppers.
I will say it does.
The difference is one's weapons and the other is food.
Right. Yeah.
It's a similar concept.
Yeah. It does raise questions of how the Mechanist is pulling this off, considering like this door to the one room where he has Fire Nation stuff is an interior door that is very difficult to get open and seemingly kind of loud. And so,
yeah.
Like, I'm not sure how he's getting weapons out of that room to the Fire Nation if they're not like showing up in the hallways to like haul them out the door.
Sure. Well, I'm wondering how he got in the first place.
I was thinking that also.
He either has he found another way in, or did he just invent something that allows him to simulate airbending?
I would assume he the latter, that he simulated something, but the episode completely glosses over.
Yeah, it doesn't answer that question.
Because if they're able to come up with like fake airbend or firebending to get into building.
I will say I actually erred on the side of the former, that he was able to get in another way, because as we mentioned, Teo believes that this door has never been opened. And it is a large enough door. And I mean, you know, we saw the last time when Aang opened, it's noisy to open.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he was able to find another way to get in and just kind of has a back entrance.
I'm going to say it's functionally a plot hole. Because
it 100% is. Yeah.
Because even if you assume he got in another way, because remember, like Momo got into the other one, you know, through like some, you know,
Well, I mean that was a Fire Nation door, and there were like holes through.
Well, yeah, you got them through some crawl spaces or whatnot, but no, there is some very big stuff in this room, which you are not getting in there unless there's a decent sized door. And like, if you have a very large secure door, you're not just gonna have like a side one that's just propped open somewhere.
True.
Maybe they have a loading dock.
Yes. There's a window. Yeah. There's a very large window.
It's actually a dome that opens and closes. It's like the Sky Dome. But
it's got like a car. A
sunroof. It's got a sunroof.
Got like a sunroof.
Yeah. The air temple sunroof.
Yes.
But yeah, so I will say before this we actually got scenes where because we've seen that Sokka is rather an ingenious kind of inventor himself. Or at least he hasn't actually invented anything, but he's come up with some clever, things here and there. And so he actually is very
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He's some ingenuity going on for Sokka there. But he's actually very interested in the things that the Mechanist is doing, and has actually been working with him, because the Mechanist shows him that there is a room that he has found in the air temple that is actually just full of gas, but it's leaking, and they're trying to figure out how it's leaking. They come up with the idea of basically putting rotten eggs in there so that they can smell where the leak is coming from. Of course, Sokka, being as against the Fire Nation as he is rather upset when this is revealed. But when the Mechanist makes clear, I was only doing this to protect my son, I didn't want to do it, kind of thing. It's not like I'm a secret spy. I'm doing this against my will to kind of keep my family safe. Plus, in the middle of their first discussion, the Fire Nation comes to cash in, and Aang busts in on the meeting and is just like, "No more stuff. We're gonna stop you," kind of stuff. And I'm just like, wow, Aang, no chill at all. You have. But yeah, so they obviously are gonna have to help these people defend themselves from the Fire Nation. And so Sokka starts to help the Mechanist try to get this hot air balloon thing that he's been trying to figure out going. And they also employ several, basically they fill some things with goo and call them bombs that they can just drop on the thing.
Those what they called slime bombs? I think they dropped.
Yeah, they had a couple different ones. They had slime bombs, they had stink bombs, they had what were the other ones? I think they had at least one other type. A what?
Is there a smoke bomb? Maybe. I don't know.
If there was, we never saw one.
No.
But they definitely had slime and stink. But yeah, so I will say we do get to see this really cool sequence where we see aerial warfare. These people on the gliders, bombing these tanks, which it come to find out the Mechanist himself designed. And unfortunately, they are kind of very, adaptable. They seem slightly impervious to attacks until Katara hears from Teo that they work on a water-based system. At which point she's like, "Let me at them," and is able to effectively dismantle a lot of these tanks. But I don't know about you guys, but I was actually really impressed with this kind of warfare sequence, like all of the elements of it. Like I said, the dive bombing, but then also when they have to like do a little ground combat against the tanks and all of this kind of stuff. What did you guys think?
It was really cool. Well, I liked how I just enjoyed seeing all of the Northern Air Temple like technology, just because it all just had like that steampunk look to it. So it was a very steampunk battle, which was really cool.
Like I said, it's very industrial revolution kind of, look.
Well, like you said, steampunk. We have a lot of steam powered stuff actually happening. And on the one hand, it almost would have been nice if the tanks had been established as being steam powered.
Sure.
But if you want to shut that down, by manipulating the water, that's a little less visually interesting than shutting them down from the outside. But also pretty ingenious that you can flip them over and they keep going. Complicated. On the one hand, I think I might have mentioned this in the last episode. Like I was dozing after lunch. Like I was having a little trouble staying awake through it.
Sure.
Which isn't a flaw about the action. The action itself, taken on its own, is fine. It's interesting. Again, seeing aerial battles, seeing tanks and whatnot.
Yeah.
In the larger context of the show, it annoyed me a bit. One, because when we first met an air nomad temple, what we were told was like, nope, these were secure from Fire Nation attack, and then it turned out, oh no, that one had been Fire Nation attacked. Also, we're watching them attacked in real time because it's actually the first one when they went to the Southern Air Temple, it was like Appa had to fly up, and it was really difficult to get to. This one, they're just like coming up the walls, like it's really not that difficult to access at all. Like they could almost just cliff climb their way up there.
But again, these are that. It is accessible because they are using machines designed by the mechanist.
Yeah, but I mean, he and his people managed to get up there, and now they're getting up there. I mean, the fact that they're getting something as big as a tank up there is impressive. But like the actual mechanism it's still using to get up there is basically just like throwing a grappling hook.
It's a grappling hook. Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say was, this is something that hadn't bothered me in a while about the show, but I did express this back around the time of the Warriors of Kyoshi, give or take, somewhere in that range, where it's like I was just really hoping I was going to get very tired of the format of they go to a new place and then the Fire Nation attacks and then they fight them off and then they go to a new place and the Fire Nation attacks. That has happened in the last 2 episodes.
Sure. But, let's keep in mind that, not all the episodes have been like
no.
Plus, we're getting towards the end of the season.
We got away from that format for a while, but to then revisit that again into consecutive episodes is part of what made me bored in this one. Is that because guess what? We set up an interesting context of like these people who had gentrified this air nomad temple.
Sure.
And then it just turns back into and then the Fire Nation attacks and they have to fight them all. So it just feels kind of repetitive.
So basically you're just saying you would have preferred to see Bato of the Water Tribe maybe in between the Deserter and the Northern Air Temple.
That would have helped, I think. At least if they're not consecutive in that way.
Sure. But because I mean, now the only problem with that is that Zuko and Iroh then would have needed to go through the deserters camp because we once again have not seen Zuko and Iroh since Bato of the Water Tribe.
I mean, that's not
2 episodes in a row.
They could. I mean, what would it been another scene of them going through the camp, or just
as long as Zuko wasn't the blue spirit, they'd be fine.
Yeah, and also they there was even a line. I think when I pulled up Paramount earlier, it replayed that particular line. Like they went by Aunt Wu's place because that was just a place they spent a considerable
in Bato. Yes.
Yes, that's why I followed them there. So, you can jump through that. It doesn't matter if there's one more place you have to cover.
All right. But yeah, like I said, we're getting this really cool kind of battle sequence. And as they are in the air, I will say at one point it's pointed out, the Mechanist has been having issues with the design of the hot air balloon, but Sokka is able to fix it basically just by putting a lid on top and, letting out the hot air in increments. So he is helping the Mechanist fly the hot air balloon, and they're, dropping these gigantic bombs that are, helping out their forces on the ground. But as they're in the air, they start to smell the smell of rotten eggs, which lets them know, hey, the gas is nearby. We can explode this gas, and that will help us out.
How much time passes in this episode?
I was about to say, it really just seems like at the most, it's a day, if maybe 2 at most.
Yeah.
So I'm like, even if they immediately threw in the rotten eggs, is this enough time for that smell to have pervaded? And because I'm assuming that they had to have thrown in eggs that were already rotten.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's like somehow they just had a surplus of rotten eggs laying around, like that they could just chuck in there at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And like you said, enough of an odor that not only can it be smelled from the point of the leak, but it can be smelled up in the air.
Right. Like, yeah. I mean, I will say you would imagine that they probably would have implemented the egg idea while they were prepping for, because they had some time in between when the Fire Nation soldier got attacked and said that they were coming back to attack, for them to prepare for the attack. So it's feasible that they would have thrown in the eggs then, but it really, as you pointed out, it doesn't seem like that much time passes.
No.
So, I mean, unless, it was secretly like 3 or 4 days to a week and they just didn't show us that time in between. I don't know, but yeah, it really does seem like a day, maybe 2 at most.
Yeah, it really
doesn't seem like enough time for that smell to have permeated.
And even if it's been like 2 or 3 days, I'm not sure that's enough time to create a massive rotten egg smell.
Yeah. Really. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a problem. And again,
well, I mean, just the sheer amount of rotten eggs that they would have needed to do to create the amount of smell that they needed.
Maybe it was one very large platypus egg.
Yes. Platypus bear egg. Yeah. Oh, maybe that's what it was. Maybe Sokka still had the remains of that egg hidden somewhere. There we go. But yeah.
The other thing about that scene too, I couldn't quite understand. I guess maybe they didn't set it up well, of how the explosion from the natural, they dropped their engine into the natural gas leak.
Yes.
In the crevice where the leak is. I'm going to just go ahead and assume the engine they dropped in there like had a fire inside of it, had a spark.
Yes.
So because otherwise it feels like it's just dropping an engine in there.
Well, I mean, Sokka specifically says this is our only way of creating.
Oh no,
he doesn't say a spark, but yeah, this is our only.
He says that, but it's not immediately clear why it's going to like set it on fire. Sure. But even when it does, when they do that, the way they've oriented where the balloon and everything is, that the balloon is flown past where all the tanks are going up the wall.
Yeah.
And then the crevice is below it. So it's not immediately clear to me how the geography works here, where blowing up the crevice blows up the tanks that are on the wall without, at the same time, remember, because wherever this gas is leaking from is going back to a room inside the temple. Yeah. Which you would think if you set that leak on fire, it's going to explode that room inside too. So why it doesn't just blow a hole out the side of the temple, I don't know.
Or blow the entire top off the mountain.
That too. Yeah, more likely that.
Because this temple is just built on the top of a mountain. So yeah, the way that this explosion is made to seem, you would expect there to be, at the very least, a giant hole in the side of this mountain. Or, but the entire thing to be obliterated.
Yeah, instead it blows up the tanks. I'm not quite sure how it does that. And then we see people fleeing we have to assume here that Sokka and the Mechanist have killed a lot of people. At least all the people in those tanks. They have to be dead.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah. At the very least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say as a result of this, the air balloon has no now means of propulsion. So Sokka and the Mechanist have to ditch, which means that the balloon will now land at the base of the mountain, which means at the end of the episode, the Fire Nation is able to recover the balloon, which means what they were trying to avoid in the first place, the Fire Nation getting more weapons, they end up giving them more weapons.
Yeah. Granted, no engine, because the engine's gone.
Right. So right. But they still have the balloon itself, and
they can get an engine pretty easily.
Yeah, and Sokka's solution for the balloon, that is all intact.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I think what they managed to, and to be fair, this is going to be my Cabbages moment in the end way. I like that tag,
sure.
To be fair. But at the same time, like, they've seen the balloon in action at this point. Like, they have from the battle lines witnessed the balloon. So, like, they're getting that regardless whether or not they recover the physical thing. Yeah. They haven't gotten the engine, which is an important part of the thing. Basically, I think by recovering it, the only valuable intel they've gotten out of this is Sokka's little bit. Really?
Well, I mean, honestly, like there's nothing to say that they haven't gotten a similar engine from him previously.
Oh, they may have. I'm just saying, like, the value of what they've recovered here. And again, I like the tag of them recovering.
I mean, they specifically say that we've got the balloon. It seems like what they were after was the balloon itself.
But what they basically learned by recovering the physical balloon is the technology of the vet.
Right.
That's
it,
really.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, obviously they're not going to use, that actual thing because it is damaged, but they can reverse engineer.
Yeah.
What they have learned from it. But yeah, I will say the only other note that I have is that, at the end, they all celebrate like, yeah, we beat them. We're good. We're safe. And I'm just like, guys, they can just come back, right? And you can't just keep blowing up the mountain.
Yes.
We're safe.
So I'm just
now.
Like, yeah, I'm like, you really don't seem like you are safe. But
to be honest, it's like we've literally established in dialogue before the Fire Nation will siege cities. Like, there's really no particular reason why they can't come back. Also, we don't get gardens or anything. I'm not sure how they're farming or feeding themselves up there.
They never really like deal with that. I mean, they do, they mention a bathhouse, so he is, getting them running water. So I would imagine that, they probably
maybe they've got a greenhouse somewhere too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I believe that the monks themselves grew crops, so they're probably just using that same area to like grow crops.
I mean, they probably are. I'll give you that. There are probably gardens up there. You could probably have some small, population of goats or I don't know what some kind of pig goat or something they have up there.
But,
yeah.
Pig
maybe they get sky bison milk.
Yeah. But no, there's absolutely nothing keeping the Fire Nation from sieging the castle or just again attack it again. Like just come back the next day. You've learned what their strategy is. Just keep attacking them. They're not going to be that good. Keep your distance. Get yourself some trebuchets and start launching stuff at it.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else that we want to mention about this episode before we move on to segments?
I had very few notes here, basically. No.
Yeah.
I did just like the steampunk aesthetic to stuff. That was nice. We've discussed some of that. Because we don't, outside of like the Fire Nation ships, I suppose, we haven't seen a lot of, and the doors and the temples are kind of steampunky in a sense. But outside of that, we haven't seen a whole ton of technology in this world, have we? It's
not particularly.
It's all pretty
not that I can think of.
I mean, unless you want to count like fireworks as technology or something like that, or
sure.
Other than that, like we're largely
like airships and other vehicles and stuff we hadn't really seen.
No,
right? Yeah, no, this is really the first.
The tanks stand out because they're basically like they're tanks. They're basically we're watching wheeled vehicles that are self-propelled and motorized, like basically a car, which seems a little odd. But no, by and large, this world is, it's like Middle Ages, China or Japan or something like that. The Usagi Yojimbo type of thing. And here we are having like steampunk 19th century technology kind of being inserted in there which is interesting. I'm probably going to guess not much is going to come of that in the future, but or if we see more of it,
possibly.
Well, but possibly, but my gut says if we see more of it, it's going to be sort of like an earlier steampunk. You're sort of like almost like a Isaac Newton type of steampunk, like
right. Well, I mean, remember, like the idea is that this mechanist is important because he is so groundbreaking. He's like the only person doing these types of things.
Yes.
So it's basically you've discovered the innovator of the Industrial Revolution is this guy. Yeah.
So I found an Easter egg that on his desk is the blueprint for something that comes into play in book 2.
Oh, I think I know what you might be talking of. Speaking of, but yeah, we can talk about that a little bit later. But that's interesting thing to note. Anything else, or do we want to just plunge forward?
I'm good to plunge forward.
All right. Well, then we are going to go ahead and get into our My Cabbages moment. My Cabbages! Which is, of course, the part of the episode where we discuss our favorite or most interesting scene of the episode. Amanda, I'm going to start with you. What was your My Cabbages moment for the episode?
It's a really silly little moment that's just kind of a throwaway thing, but when it's like Sokka and the mechanist and they look at the candles to determine the time, and then he says,
the candle clock
explodes, and he's like, it's 4:00 or for a candle, and
for a candle, as I like to say.
And Sokka just crack up because Sokka's like, I found somebody who gets my humor.
I was about to say, because that's totally Sokka's humor. Yeah, for a candle. Okay. Loren, what about you?
Like I said earlier, it was the tag at the end where the Fire Nation discovers the balloon, the war balloon. I have some quibbles a little bit, I suppose, with how technically valuable this is for them. Obviously, it's worth something, but in terms of just the dramatic effect of yay, we've won, and the tag scene is, oh no, we the Fire Nation actually got something out of this the ominous feel for the future. I like it. Yeah,
I will say, I've just thought of this in terms of industrialization, things like that. We haven't seen like a lot of innovations like running water and things like that, but we forget the Fire Nation uses metal coal-driven ships.
Well, I mentioned ships earlier. I said,
okay. I missed that. But yeah, so that is a piece of technology that would have been more 18th century or 9th. Around that industrial era.
It is actually something funny I thought about in the last episode and didn't mention, was that historically most of the Fire Nation ships I think we've seen have been metal ships.
Yeah.
But rather conveniently for Zhao and Aang's battle at the end of last episode, those boats are made of wood.
Wooden. Yep. No, that's true. Yeah,
maybe those were originally waterbender ships, and then water tribe ships, and then like Zhao and friends took them over.
I mean, they don't,
or even Earth Kingdom ships.
Yeah,
because,
that's true.
Yeah,
that could be. I was gonna say,
yeah.
we have seen just 2 episodes ago, we saw a Water Tribe ship, and it didn't look like those.
No, they're more laden with like skins and stuff.
Yeah.
They
look more like an old Viking boat or like an old Greek boat or something like that than like something more modern, like what we saw there.
Yeah. All right. So my cabbages moment. Honestly, I think I'll probably give it to the battle sequence. I think that was kind of the most fun bit, kind of seeing the aerial battle taking place, with this aerial combat kind of going on. That was kind of cool. Other than that, I think my next would be when Katara decides to take out a glider, and they tell her to keep her mouth closed, otherwise she'll swallow bugs.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
And then she ends up swallowing a bug anyway. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So now let's get to our Mako Award, which is, of course, the part of the show where we discuss our favorite or most interesting character for the episode. So Loren, you're going to start us off with this one. Who gets your Mako Award?
The return of Rene Aubergenois as the Mechanist. Glad to hear his voice again. Glad to hear him in a character who, again, like I said, even if he doesn't recur, who at least feels like someone who could. That he has value to their mission going forward. He could provide them value in a way that, like, what's his name, dude? Last time was a one and done type antagonist.
Yeah, exactly.
So good to hear him. So someone with a nicely conflicted backstory. Also, it's weird. I think I was annoyed at first, but eventually came around. I was like, I just kind of, on some level, like that he has this sort of scar thing on his face that it doesn't super explain how he got that shape of a thing on his face.
Well, I mean, he also has such, even in like his more serious scenes, he has such a jolly delivery for this character, because this character is kind of, a more positive character. And so, which is why he's throwing out, jokes like for a candle, like he has that delivery where you expect every other word that he says to be some sort of joke or jovial thing. So that was a fun performance. Amanda.
Mine will also be going to the Mechanist. Everything he does, even though he's doing things for the Fire Nation, everything he does comes from a good place. He has a good heart. Everything
desire to protect his son and his people. I'm gonna make it unanimous. I am also giving it to the Mechanist for all the reasons stated before. And like I said, it's just always great to hear Rene Aubergenois. And in a character not only more kind of interesting and with more potential than his last, but much different from his last character. Like, honestly, I was like I had to double take. I was like, I'm certain that's Rene Aubergenois, but it just feels so different. So yeah, I just really enjoyed that performance from him. All right, well then it is time to rate the episode on the Avatar State Meter. Of course, you can rate it from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, the show at full power, 1 being the worst, could deal the show a fatal blow. Amanda.
Yes.
What rating would you give this episode?
I'll give it another 3, I think.
All right. Right down the middle.
Yep.
Good, solid 3. All right. Loren.
I'll just reiterate the same. I'll give it a 3. Just straight down the middle. It's fine. I did it okay. And frankly, as far as as much as I was complaining earlier about repetition of Fire Nation attacks, I preferred this one over the last one. So at least it had that much going for it.
There you go. All right. Yeah, I'm also going to give this a 3. This is an example of a fine, pleasant episode, but it's also kind of inconsequential to me. Like, honestly, I am surprised. Not upset or, I love to hear Renee Aubergenois. But I'm a little surprised at the return and apparently possible return in the even live action series. I'm actually more surprised that they're bringing him into the live action series, because it does feel a little inconsequential. And just what I know of his future appearances, I'm just going to give it away. He does come back. It seems like they could have done without him if they wanted to.
Maybe in the case of where they've,
they might have given him more in that. Yeah. So, again, not a bad character, not a character that I'm disappointed, but it also seems like one that could have been easily cut if they wanted to. Still enjoy this episode. Just feel like it's a little inconsequential, which is why it's, a 3. All right. Well, then we are down then to the final segment, the most important segment, the question, the big question, the one that is on everybody's lips. And that is, of course, Loren, is this your new favorite show?
No, I mean, again, slight step up from the last episode, but still step down from the previous ones. We're in the final stretch here for the season, though. I'm again interested to see where we go, how we wrap up. And then to as much as y'all were reminiscing about season 2 earlier, look forward to seeing where we go there.
Yeah.
Right. Again, and like I said previously, when y'all are giving this a 3, that seems to imply you're expecting, you're hinting at better things to come, stronger things. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing what that is.
Yeah. All right. Then we want to go ahead and let everyone know where you can contact us. Of course, you can contact me at the Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Email at theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. Make sure to check out all of our shows and everything we put out on YouTube, as well as the podcast feed. And also don't forget to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/theflyingcow. Lots of great stuff over there. Loren, Amanda, what you guys got going on?
Well, as usual, you can find me on the Twitch at Panda Princessa and the Twitters at Amanda Van Heil, and then on the Zelda Universe TVs on the YouTubes.
All right.
And you can find me on no video game platforms related, but you can find me on Twitter at Loren Collins. You can also buy my book, Bull Spotting: Finding Facts in the Age of Misinformation, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever the case may be. Search for my name, Loren Collins, or Bull Spotting.
All right. Well, as always, we will be back next time covering, as we said already, the first episode. We have finally reached the Northern Water Tribe, and it is called, appropriately, the Waterbending Master. Dun, dun, dun. Going to be very, very interesting. But until that time, moo.
Moo.